fishing man out on the lake. All you need is a line and a pole that'll never break.
Hey there, Rednecks, Preppies, Redneck Preppies. It's me, the Redneck Preppy. How you doing today? Great? Good. Just a friendly reminder, the Redneck Preppy can also be found on Rumble and Odyssey. Links to both are in the description below. Now, I and my brother-in-law David have had an ongoing debate going back years, and it flared up again recently while we were fishing. His contention has long been that fishing in and around beaver huts and dams were short roads to catching no fish. Now, he argues that's the case because beavers could go after the bass and they consume the fish that bass tended to go after. Now, because of those reasons, beaver huts and dams are places that bass tended to avoid. Now, I, on the other hand, have argued steadfastly that bass in fact thrive near beavers. And in fact, fishing near beaver huts in particular was a marvelous way to catch bass. Now, this disputation has occasionally got slightly heated. We're talking about fishing after all. So today I figured I'd survey the literature, as academics would say, and find out whether or not beavers were actually dilatory to the presence of bass. Now, I'll admit I haven't studied beavers this much since high school. Now let's start with the idea that bass themselves could be the prey of beavers, which would actually be a very good reason why they would tend to avoid areas with them. Now, many people believe that beavers do in fact eat fish. Makes sense, beavers and fish are both in the water, and beavers got them chompers that would probably make quick work of a fish. Apparently the idea that beavers eat fish may have originated in C.S. Lewis's Chronicles of Narnia. Now, while his books make for wonderful reading, they're apparently a less credible source for animal biology. Now, scientists, and I mean real ones, not like Anthony Fauci, state that beavers are strictly herbivorous. They don't eat fish. The diet of beavers is largely made up of things like tree bark, cambium, which is that softer stuff underneath bark, twigs, leaves, and 80 different varieties of aquatic plants and roots. So the ideas of beavers eating fish is completely ridiculous. Except for some pictures and video we have of beavers eating fish. Right now what you're watching is a video taken a few years ago of a beaver eating a fish. So while most scientists are pretty hardline on the question of beavers eating fish, beavers themselves apparently aren't so. Okay, here's the reality. Apparently beavers, which one expert described as an opportunistic feeder, can eat fish in very limited circumstances. Now, this typically occurs during winter months when snow and ice restrict their ability to get to their preferred foods. Now, I need to underline here, as soon as the snow and the ice start to fly, beavers don't immediately start eating fish. Now, the fish that they do eat, again, on very rare occasions, are probably ones that have become trapped in beaver huts and dams or scavenged bodies. Ultimately, beaver physiology and dental structure are not suited for protein, but rather for herbivorous life. So, I know some people are going to argue this because I brought it up in a fishing forum once, and people got quite offended at the notion that a beaver would eat anything other than plant material. Again, it is very rare, but it can happen. It's not an argument, however, for beavers eating fish. Of course, this leads us to the related topic of whether beavers go after the prey that bass would generally consume, smaller fish. Now, if we accept that beavers are herbivores, which I think I just established, they seem to be the vast majority of the time, then the idea that they would deliberately go after prey fish is also off the table. So they aren't competing for the same food sources as bass and driving them off in search of food in greener pastures. Now, everything I've said, however, doesn't necessarily mean that bass and beavers coexist peacefully. It's still quite possible that beavers stick to a plant-based diet, bass to a protein-based diet, and yet you couldn't catch a bucket mouth near a beaver if your life depended on it. The favored construction projects of beavers, namely huts and dams, can alter aquatic habitats by changing water flow, depth, clarity, and quality, which can of course cause fish to seek other locales. But on the other hand, floodings caused by beaver dams can create more fish habitat. Felled trees can serve as more habitat for prey fish, flies, beetles, and anyone who fishes for bass knows that they love positioning themselves around submerged trunks, branches, and even entire trees. Unfortunately, scientific evidence for fish behavior around things like beaver dams could support either side of the argument. Fish do often locate near beaver dams because the shade provided can cool them off, and the dam itself can protect them from predators. But there is no conclusive evidence that the dams have any real impact on fish populations. Now, beaver huts can serve as a place to cover, particularly for small bait fish like minnows, something that bass rather like to eat. And all the wonderful cracks and crevices in a hut can, give a bass a place to hide from their own predators. That said, close proximity to each other is something that neither bass nor beaver seems particularly enthusiastic about. Beavers don't eat fish, but if you've ever been around Canada's official rodent, you know that they can be quite aggressive. Tail slapping, splashing, and scurrying around can of course frighten fish and cause them to move away. But fishing and science sometimes live in different worlds, so I reached out to an all-star cast of professional anglers to settle the question of whether the presence of beaver huts meant bad fishing. I hit up Bassmaster, FLW, and MLF tournament winners to get their thoughts and conclusively end this long-running debate between me and my brother-in-law. And none of them answered my messages. Well, actually, that isn't true. 2 of them did. I'll get to that later. Now, while I waited for these angling champions to weigh in, I embarked on some more research. Now, either way, you're going to find a little bit of argument. For every one person telling you, for example, that beaver huts near deeper water are prime spots, you'll occasionally find another person telling you that beaver huts aren't potential holders of fish. And huts, create fish habitat. Well, huts destroy fish habitat. Depends on who you're asking. So in the ongoing debate between my brother-in-law and I on the matter, who we believe may depend on what we want to believe. Except that the actual experts, our fellow anglers, too tend to go one way. Which brings me back to the world-class anglers who did respond to my messages, Dave Lefebvre and Wesley Strader. Now when I asked Dave Lefebvre, winner of 7 tournaments, top 10 finisher in 63 tournaments, and one of the most successful anglers in FLW history, if he thought that beaver scared away bass, he responded, I agree with you. That is me, the Redneck Preppy. And Wesley Strader with 6 career wins, 57 top 10 finishes, and 67 top 20 finishes, he told me simply, beaver huts house bass. So beavers don't scare bass. It's good enough for me. Are you listening, brother-in-law Dave? Experts have weighed in. Fishing around beaver huts is an excellent way to catch fish. What say you, though? Feel free to hash it out in the comments below. And thanks Wesley Strader and Dave Lefebvre. At any rate, I hope you found today's video at least be vaguely entertaining and mildly informative. As always, I hope all your fishing goes well, be it near or far away from the beavers of the world. Take care, and bye-bye.